What is happening, everybody? I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. We have a great scan. We've got a great market. The past couple weeks have been extremely hot, and I'm just hoping that this keeps up. Before we get into scan for tonight, I want to go over three main things, and then we'll get right to it. First and foremost, Thursday is the Zynga Trading Summit. So for those of you guys that are in the New York area, even if you're not from the New York area, you obviously can still go. But if you are in the New York area, there's really no excuse not to go. You can use IU VIP and get 50% off your ticket. It's very cheap to go, and it's a great way to kind of meet other traders. I tweeted about it a couple days ago. And even said that, if you just take one thing from the conference that's going to better your trading over the long haul, that's what it's all about. And there's a good chance that you're going to pick up many more little nuggets throughout the day and throughout the couple days if you're in New York City meeting other traders and whatnot. But one of the biggest things is, at least at our Traders for a Cause events, is you start to really develop some very good relationships with traders that you actually meet in person. It's totally different than just this alias online and whatnot, and you can start to develop some type of accountability with traders that you meet in person, and really both further each other's trading careers. So one of the biggest things for me is always kind of checking in with guys. For example, for me on a daily basis, obviously Cam, who does the website with me, but also Eric and Josh and a few other guys that I continually just go over my trades for the day, and not necessarily discuss P&L and all that kind of stuff all the time, but more so just what's working, what's good, what could have done better, and just kind of be there for each other if and when things are not good. So all these guys I've met in person. And, we've done that at Traders for a Cause. And so, anyway, long story short, Thursday is Zynga's Trading Summit. They are featuring our Trader Talks, which is basically to the point, 10 minutes or less, drive home the point over and over and over off the stage. Next. It's meant to encourage conversation. It's meant to encourage other people to kind of go back to that particular speaker and kind of want to know more. But you're going to be able to, it's going to be punchy, it's going to be to the point, and I'm pretty excited that, Zach kind of set this up, and they're letting us do these on stage. And on top of that, a percentage of the proceeds is actually going to Traders for a Cause. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. Secondly, Friday night in New York City, Sang Lucci, many of you guys know, he's been trading in my office when he's not in Puerto Rico. A lot of you guys probably like seeing his tweets. He's a pretty humorous guy every now and then, and he started to do these Lucci meets, and so we did one in Boston this past week, and it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of the guys within the IU community, as well as just other traders that are just either have been trading for many years, or even just new aspiring traders, and so that was a lot of fun. He is just a pretty good speaker just in general. So he's always good at kind of creating conversation. And the good part about that is, as the conversation goes, there's a lot of gold, nuggets that just come out. And, even things that I, probably wouldn't think of on my own. And once you get going in a conversation, they just come out. So it was really good. He was a great person to do Q&A with up there, and I had a lot of fun. So he's doing it again, and so that's going to be on Friday night. Like I said, the sign-up page is right there. It's free, and I hope to see anybody that's New York City-based, or, again, if you just happen to be in town, whatever, it doesn't matter, there. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see you there, hopefully. And then the third thing, lastly, 3 years or so ago, Cam was going to start this intermediate series on YouTube. There was a lot of funny comments The one user was hoping that he'd still be alive by the time that we complete this particular series. So we did a beginner series. I'm sure many of you guys have seen it on YouTube. Nearly 1 million views on the first of many, but over many million views total. It's a really good resource for free education. So anyway, the goal was to then go into an intermediate series, but it just took a little bit longer than originally anticipated. We've been busy building out new features all the time, things like that, and this kind of stuff sometimes takes a back seat in the sense, knowing that it is free and whatnot. So anyway, first one's out. Make sure you check it out. Leave some comments, reviews, whatever you want to do, and make him feel happy, and maybe we'll get the second one out relatively quickly, I hope. So, moving on, scan, and just kind of some thoughts about this market, right? Last week when I did this, I talked about kind of coming in with an open mind and expecting huge range, expecting the unexpected, and you really needed to do that this week. There was just so much action that is not normal. It's so much action that, like I said, I wasn't around in 99, 2000, but, some of these IPOs just going from 40 to 50 to 60 to 70, and even BYND, that kind of action, 45 to 90 to 188, doubling in an intraday pretty much from earnings. These things are crazy. And one of the biggest things to do is not come in with a plan that this is the trade I'm going to take and this is what it should happen, because right now nothing's happening that should happen. The key is just really thinking about a big picture plan. What is the perfect case scenario, and couple that with it expecting the unexpected, just to make sure that you have more room than normally necessary, so that you can complete a trade within a reasonable amount of risk. And in a situation like Chewy, this IPO, I mean, it was insane. Ended up being a fantastic trade, but at the same time, you just saw FVRR IPO the day before, and so when it does break through 40, you start to kind of second guess your type of thought process and what you originally were planning on doing. And really, the key to remember is that there is so much range right now that you don't need to be the first guy in. You don't need to be in at the top, because a lot of times what you're going to do, and the biggest point that I wanted to make on Scan tonight, is you do not want to pre-exhaust yourself. If you pre-exhaust yourself, you're going to miss the backside of the move, because what happens is we have the FOMO. We have fear of missing the top. We have the fear of, what if we miss it? What if we don't get in there? What if, it's going to pull back without me? Look, when a stock has $6, $7, $8, $10 a range, it's okay if you're 50 cents or $1 too late. It's better to be 50 cents or $1 late than 3, 4, 5 too early. So just remember that. Because so many times when you start in early, even if you don't lose money, you miss out on a huge opportunity, just because your mindset goes from, well, this should pull back to 35 to, all right, you know what? I'm just going to take it off for flat because I was in too early. I got a little bit of a scare. I'm going to go ahead and cover right now. And then it does everything you expected to happen, but instead you're not in it because you were in it too early, and now you're glad to be out. So just think about that when you're making trades this week. So that's pretty much what this stuff says in here. And then let's get right to it. So Chewy obviously IPO'd on Friday. This was a major one. I, for one, was really kind of thinking that it was going to rip through 40 level and then sit back. Maybe retest one more time, then sit back. And so in that whole pre-exhaustion conversation, I kind of felt a little unsure because I was playing as if 40 was going to probably rip and then sit right back and then fade off. And it held around for a couple more times than I expected. So as I had started to size in, I felt the need to go ahead and size back out relatively quickly. and just hold a small percentage of what I had in mind for size. Although the trade was fantastic, it worked out. The read was good. The fact that I figured it was coming back to VWAP, and also that it was still staying heavy. For those of you guys that followed on Twitter, you saw the kind of the thought process and the call outs that we had in the room on Friday. Really good read on it. However, unfortunately, probably a third of the size that I would have liked to be. So at any rate, we're going to be watching this one for sure. It was definitely very, very heavy. It reminded me a lot of LK on IPO day, just like this right here. So I would actually expect the gap up tomorrow, and I think we could still have a little bit more sell pressure, fades, unwinds, and then we might have that rebound. So for right now, if I were to have a bias or if I were to kind of make a plan, I would expect something like this to happen on the daily. But we got to see tomorrow. We got to see how it opens up. I would expect some type of big imbalance at the open. All I hope for is range, volume, and some type of edge that makes sense. Same thing, FVRR. I would expect a little bit of a rebound, maybe towards 33 and potentially up to 34 before it starts to find any resistance. This pretty much did come back on air, so normally what I do is I kind of look left and look at back where it was basing, and it was basically 33. So I would be cautious chasing anything under 33 just because it could just be a trap for the rebound. We saw that on RVLV where it really came in hard the next day and then came back. So that would be a perfect situation if we did have that gap up, flush out, and we started to see a buyer midday on FVRR, then at that point I would be ready for that trade. So gap down, flush, I'm interested. Gap up, rush 33, 34, I'm interested. So anyway, more comments on that in the morning. Let's see where it opens. Again, you don't really need a full 100% plan the night before right now, just because you don't know where you're going to be. And CRWD, the following day after the IPO, it had a pretty big gap up, but it wasn't really doing too much pre-market, right? This is what you could see. But then all of a sudden, we had the imbalances hit, and we had a trade. We had a nice reactive trade. We had a great opportunity out of the gate, and it really started to provide some fantastic action. So the key here, though, and I've reminded the room every single day, is to make sure that you got wish orders out there. Wish orders are essentially, especially on moves like this, where you end up having an entry, you short into a parabolic, but where would you like it to flush out to? Where would you expect it to flush out to? A lot of times you'll probably be right, but if you don't have orders in, you'll probably be too slow. Or in the middle of that trade, you'll say, well, let me just see what it does. It just flushed out. Let me see if it pulls back a little bit more. You don't want to make that decision at a time like this where it flushes out a buck or two, because you know what? The next candle might be a swipe right back up to the highs. You could have just taken 2. Now you're down 2. And if you're a reactive trader off the open, have those orders in there where you would wish to fill. And ideally, they flush out. You get covered. And remember, you can cover and you can reshort right away if you want. So don't let it deter you that, I missed an opportunity because it continued to go lower. That's going to happen every day. But the key is that you can always re-add if it stays heavy, if it does what you think. But especially between 9 and 10, it's always good to go ahead and lock in along the way. So that's CRWD, higher the better, similarly. Again, we got to see what happens out of the gate. Nice fader, view up, pretty much held throughout the day. If anything, I'd be looking probably for a 65 push and then unwind, or some type of stabilization. And I wouldn't really expect any big upticks unless we're over the 67 level. So again, I don't want to come in with too heavy of a plan. I know I want to watch this. I know it's going to be a good trade. But I don't know if we're opening at 62 or 66 or what. So right now, lots of range. I'll come at it in the morning. RVLV so far, good read on this thing. I was a dip buyer throughout the morning flush, and then the idea was late day. Nice little ABCD setup you guys should see here, and then nice little breakout. The key here is obviously size and then entry, right? So, this is now kind of going into thin mode. This very easily could be a 45, 50, 60 type breakout, but the only situation that's going to get you in trouble is chasing big breakouts. Over here having FOMO. Oh, I missed it. Let me chase it and kind of see what it does, and then slams right back down. Same thing here, slams back down. Your edge is dips, flushes with risking accordingly. VWAP, prior support, things like that. ZM has been really good. I did not trade it on Friday, but the prior 3 days, 4 days, it's been a phenomenal trade. So really, the only reason I didn't trade it on Friday is just because I was focused on FVRR short out of the open into that 44 push, and also CRWD. But in a situation like this is a great example of kind of looking left to predict right. Does not mean that it's the end all be all. It does not mean that this has to happen, but it's a great spot to kind of think about where your edge may be. And as this walked up into the 10 a.m., 11 a.m. hour, it actually went right into the prior resistance from the pre-market and morning move the prior day. So in my mind, whenever a situation like this happens, I like to anticipate the pullback a little bit versus the prior resistance levels. If it breaks, that's okay, because I've only started in. If it doesn't and it starts to pull back, now I can scale and then risk based off the highs. So we'll see what happens, but you can kind of see that we're pretty much stuck between 99.50s and 101, 102 for the most part, 101.50s. And so we're kind of channeling in there. So any big moves throughout there may be met with sell pressure, and any flush outs may be met with buying pressure. But for now, it's staying on radar. I feel like a $5 to $10 or $8 to $10 type day is near. It's just a matter of time. Roku was pretty weak into the close. Again, very similar to ZM's, kind of same thought process here. So I'm keeping it on radar. Also think a big move is probably nearing anyway. Whether or not that's 90, 95, or $1.10, I'd prefer the short side personally. But again, right now IPOs are taking the front and center for me. But this is also on back radar just in case nothing else proves worthy. KURA. Had a short on this one off the open, and a nice flush out. Pretty much left it alone the rest of the day on this one. This is what I call a transitional type day typically. And what I mean by that is it didn't really do anything except out of the open. And so it's a good day where there's new buyers coming in, potentially new shorts coming in, and potentially sellers coming out that wanted to sell. So there might be some new blood coming in. So typically the following days is the actual move. And I think the last time we had something like that was like IOVA, where we had a gap up and it pretty much pulled back to the middle of where it was hanging out that day, right? It had a morning move, sat back, and it was pretty much sideways all day. But then the following days is when the actual move happened that sustained. So that's kind of the same thought process with this KURA. I would expect that we either continue or obviously can pull back. But the thought process here is we're either going to go continuation towards 2021, or I think we can go right back to 17 or a little bit lower. So I think we've got a $1.50, $2 move coming. And for me, my goal is not to predict which way it's going to go. My goal is to join the way that it picks that it wants to go. So that's the thought process there. PUYI, nothing obviously to be too crazy excited about given the volume. But what did interest me is, it's a very, very thin tape. But if you go back and you actually look, these couple days here, this had 1.8 million and the next day had 1.7 million. And the only reason I'm mentioning it is it wasn't just a block or two. it wasn't just some volume that hit and then that was it. It was actually, a little bit of trading. There was a couple blocks here. You can kind of see somebody was getting positioned in there. It went nuts, came back. And then the same thing over here again. There was some volume, and then they brought it back down, and there was obviously some blocks. So somebody's got a plan here. Somebody's doing something. Somebody positioned. And whether or not they turn that into something, we'll see. We'll see if this holds past Friday. However, this is how things happen, right? Somebody took a position. Maybe they know what's up. Maybe they got a master plan. But the only way that I would care about this is if we start to get 2, 3, 5 to 10 million type of shares, and at which case then we have a potential runner. But limited history here, so it kind of reminds me of a situation, like Soli, right? Soli, I mean, who would have guessed that? But limited history, and then we had the first day of actual volume, which was 23 million shares. Prior to that, I think the highest day was 1 million. So that's sort of the same thought process with PUI. If we get a PR, if we get the volume that matters, then hey, this is going to go front and center on my watch. But again, nothing I'm too crazy excited about right now. LK, mentioned this earlier, kind of comparing it to what we might expect on Chewy. But right now, this has had some fantastic range and very friendly range, right? Where it goes up, pulls back, consolidates, comes over VWAP, ramps up, nice ABCD, comes back, confirms. We talk about confirming versus VWAP. And at that point, dips versus VWAP, very clean trade. So I'd be looking for a potential pullback versus 1910s. I wouldn't, if it was not over 1910, I would probably be looking to fade it. But I could see it coming back towards this 1910 level and then potentially 1950s, 20s, and then carry on. WKHS tried to come back later on in the day on Friday. I'm not taking this thing off radar. I actually still have a little bit of a position. Just feels like one of those ones that should have died like 20 times by now. So I have kept some just to kind of keep it on my radar. But if you guys remember last Sunday, the goal was to join a breakout. And if 250 busted, it was going to be a nice move. So ended up taking that trade at 230. And had a nice little breakout to 3, had a nice scalp opportunity, and actually still have some from that entry. PD staying familiar. Again, at this point, I'm getting into my probably non-main watches. And again, my goal is to always just be familiar with all these trades that interest me, because I'm not looking to trade them all tomorrow. I'm looking to be familiar with them, just because when they hit your scan, you already know, okay, yes, all the IPOs are pulling back today. Okay, PD just hit my scan. There's a good chance that one's probably going to follow suit. Stuff like that. Or just like back when MAXR went on the news, we had just traded it the prior weeks. I was so familiar with the name just because I was staying current with the chart that I was able to react that much faster. So PD, I'm just staying familiar. It's kind of inching along. This thing could easily go to highs, but I'm just going to be waiting for an opportunity. This type of action is kind of hard to trade, obviously. So for me, I need to wait for higher volume or at least a cleaner trend where, you might just see a steady fade, steady action based off of, either a seller versus VWAP or some type of buyer versus VWAP. JFIN, recent IPO, coming back. Again, not much volume. I just have it on radar in case, because if this does get momentum, it could easily be back to 20 in a matter of days. CTRV, I'm keeping this trash on watch. Newsletter, obviously. Who would have guessed? Newsletter, for sure. On Friday, they sold. It went into a circuit halt down. I flipped it a little bit, just small, but for the most part, you can see VWAP held as the sell area there. But they basically rescinded their offering, their raise the other day, and then they rescinded their rescind, saying, "Oops, we screwed up. We didn't want to do that." So obviously, they got no idea what's going on over there. But with that said, that creates a short thesis that, it should be shorted, it's trash, they need to raise, all these things happen, but that's similar to what happened with RBZ for you guys that remember, right? And, sometimes when people get too aggressive on a thin float, this type of stuff happens. So to me, it's just worth an eye, especially if we wake up one day and it's down to 6 or 5 or 4 and there's no confirmation that they've raised. Who knows? We might have an RBZ type of situation. But for now, it's trash, and there's no reason to hold this thing. A lot of risk. So, at this point in the scan, I'm going to just shift for potential unwinders in the near term. Charts that I think look like they're about to fade. If they do rebound, then we're probably going to have some pretty good rebounds too. But they look like they're hanging on by a needle. So first and foremost, we have NTNX, nice daily chart, nice unwind on Friday. So in a situation like this, higher the better. And basically what I look for it to do is kind of come back towards the prior resistance. So in this case, 2580s, we'll call it 26. Home. Everybody bought the dip. Everybody is, this was just 20. Now it's 8. Now maybe a rebound to 10. A lot of times, I'm in the same boat. I'm thinking this thing could easily rebound. It was just 20. It's got to rebound a little bit. And then all of a sudden, everybody realized at the same time, nope, it's going to 6. And so I'd like to join that because then you get a nice clean unwind, just like TEVA, which has been phenomenal. You can kind of see here where it gaps down, rebounds. Everybody's, all right, we're going to get a rebound. Nope. Bam. Right down to 9 and 8 and, maybe 7 this week. So MNK, same chart as home, same situation. 10, same thing again. So you'll notice these similarities on charts. And so basically what I'm looking for is for them to hit my 6%er continuation unwinder scan. And as long as the mornings are met with sellers, I'm interested. And that's kind of where MNST came from. This was on scan all week last week. And it was after this day that it pulled back. And basically I wanted to short every morning push. And obviously it paid out really nicely this day, $3 per share. Unfortunately, that was the day that I did not trade it because we had other IPOs and whatnot. But the prior 2 days were good. I was leaning into every single pop. But once you start to see a seller there, the key is just to look for them. A lot of times they'll gap at 10, 20, 30 cents that next morning. And then you don't need to find the top, but you just join as the sell pressure comes back. And it ends up being a very nice trade. Tiva, we just kind of showed that a minute ago. MNST I just went over. Suave, staying familiar. I think Eric's been trading this one pretty nicely since the pops. Again, very hard to trade. Obviously, it just looks like PD, right? I mean, if you compare the two charts, all these gaps, very difficult. So I need to wait for that edge day. The edge day for me on PD and Suave is the day that it has higher than average volume, higher than average normal volume. And a lot of times when you have higher than average normal volume, you actually have a much tighter trend and a lot cleaner trade. So that's what I'm waiting for, but I'm staying familiar in my head. Like, okay, if I see this thing cashing in under 55, there's a good chance we're going to go and, come into the 50, 45 level. Play, staying familiar. Beautiful. I mean, heavy all day at VWAP. You can kind of see it kind of dancing around. I don't really have any care in the world for a trade right here. But this tells you, all right, bam, faded off VWAP, comes back, it retests, and it fails. So that, to me, shows that there's a little bit of sell pressure, and at that point, I like to risk based off of VWAP on a trade like that. So we've had a couple good days on this thing. I traded it the first day that it had earnings, and I traded it the next morning based off the same thought process that we went over before on ZM and Roku, thinking come back up, retest this 41 level, and then sit back. And it did exactly that, and it was a pretty clean trade. And last but not least, MU. MU has just been having a pretty sad time lately. And you know what? It looks pretty choppy. It looks pretty bad. And, it could get worse. It could get worse. We're at a very, very key level here. If we drop that 32.20 level, 32s, basically 32.20s, then we could be potential unwind all the way back towards 31. Right over here is that prior support on the daily. If we take a little look back a little bit further, if I can, then we can go all the way back to 28. So you can kind of see where I came up with the 28 to 30 near term. If we can't hold on to this level, we start to potentially go back and retest this level here. So that's the plan. Again, Zynga Trading and Investing Summit. That is Thursday, Sheridan, New York, Times Square. And again, percentage of the proceeds go to Traders for a Cause. It should be a fantastic time. I'm excited about it. Like I said, they're going to be showcasing some of our trader talks there. Zach set them up, and it should be a fantastic time. So I'm excited about that. And then last but not least, a reminder, New York, Friday night, Lucci meets 5:30 to 8:30, and so that should also be a great time. And that's it. So we'll catch you guys in the room tomorrow. Thank you for checking out Scan. If you have any questions, reach out. You know the drill. Here to help. Leave a comment. Email us. Contact us. And have a good trading day tomorrow.